A gregarious young man, just months away from his wedding day.
He was always happy. All he wanted in life was to have a family, work hard, and fall in love.
Has his future viciously ripped away.
It was evident the young man had been bludgeoned.
It hurt me so much, and I lost it. I lost it. Me volví loca.
Investigators are sent down a rabbit hole of suspects.
He was violently jealous.
He's a significant drug dealer. It looked like that he may have been kidnapped.
They were accompanying a very scared-looking Hispanic young man.
Before a shocking revelation.
What he was describing was more like something off of a TV show.
Turns the case on its head.
What he did to us changed our life forever.
It was a shock to all of us.
It came as an absolute surprise.
He had no remorse, he had no guilt. He's a monster.
Cornelius, a small town in northern Oregon, nestled among picturesque orchards.
Cornelius is a longtime farming community. It's a very kind of nice, sort of sleepy place.
It's kind of a little bedroom community. It's mostly a blue-collar town, working class.
The calm of Cornelius is shaken one quiet morning with the reported disappearance of 20-year-old Gonzalo Pizano Guzman.
That morning, my mom saw that Gonzalo's bed was made, like no one slept there. So she obviously got all concerned. He didn't come home last night. And then my mom tells me to go to the police station with Sol to report him missing.
His fiancée, Sol, and his sister, Juana, had been actively looking for him that day.
That morning, the family contacted his place of employment. He had not shown up for work.
The family was extremely distraught by this disappearance. He doesn't miss work without calling in. They couldn't reach him by pager or by telephone.
And we're all freaking out because this is not who he is and what he does. It's so odd. It's not normal.
We learned that Saul had seen Gonzalo the night before. They had visited with each other until about 9:15 that evening, and Saul reported seeing him leaving in his car alone, headed home.
But he did not return home last night.
To aid the detectives, Saul provides a description of what Gonzalo was wearing when she last saw him.
He had on an athletic top with some numbers on it, and specifically 2 gold chains.
While Juana and Saul speak with police, other family members frantically look for Gonzalo.
We all went different ways in our cars, driving around just to see if we found his car. We were trying to look for anything.
My dad thought, maybe he got in an accident. We were desperate. We just wanted a clue.
Around 4 or 5 o'clock in the afternoon, we all started feeling like, okay, something's wrong now.
On the outskirts of town, Gonzalo's father makes a disturbing discovery.
My dad spotted the car in an empty field. When he saw the car, the white car, he knew right away that was Gonzalo's car. He found the car burned up. He rushed to the car, opened up the car, and didn't find any body. So once that happened, it was just nuts. Where is he at? Did he get kidnapped? Is he dead? It was even worse.
Detectives arrive and search for signs of what happened to Gonzalo.
The car was totally destroyed by fire. It appeared that the car had been heavily doused with accelerant, probably gasoline.
Somebody was clearly trying to cover up evidence from inside that vehicle.
There was no evidence of any body.
There were zip ties found near the car.
As far as the scene was concerned, it yielded minimal clues. As the car had been burned completely, the chances of DNA or blood or fingerprints were greatly reduced.
Later that afternoon, another chilling discovery is made, just 11 miles away.
A citizen had seen something that looked like a dead body in the ditch on her road. The body was found about a 15-20 minute drive from where the burned car was.
This young man matched both the physical description, the clothing, and the jewelry. At this point, there was no doubt that this was Gonzalo. It was clearly a homicide. There was evidence of bullet wounds on the body and what appeared to be repeated knife blows to the heart. We also discovered some injuries to the back of the head, and it was evident the young man had been bludgeoned.
It was apparent that he died a violent death.
We felt almost immediately that this was very personal in nature. There was no phone and there was no wallet at the scene, but he still had his jewelry with him, which were gold. So the thought of this being a robbery was off the table pretty quickly. There was another motive here.
There were zip ties found near the body, and they matched the zip ties from the scene of the car. One of the things that went through my head was, had someone brought zip ties to restrain Gonzalo? We also located 4 spent casings from a .40 caliber semi-automatic pistol.
After finishing up at the crime scene, police are faced with the difficult task of delivering the devastating news to Gonzalo's family.
The police came early in the morning. I opened the door and they told me, "We found your brother, but unfortunately he's dead." I was in shock.
¿Viste? Me volví loca. Y yo gritaba. Y gritaba y gritaba. I heard my mom screaming. It was something I never want to hear again. It's not even a scream. It's a pain so deep that only moms know what that is. I found out that he was murdered. And I lost it. I lost it. Era gritar, llorar. Algo tan fuerte que todavía de mi mente no se ha acabado. To know that such an amazing person was taken away, he didn't deserve to die that way. Bottom line is, I don't have my brother anymore.
Born in Mexico in 1979, Gonzalo had a playful spirit.
He loved to dance, he loved music, always a smile, always caring, and always joking around with people.
Gonzalo era un muchacho alegre y llegaba, me abrazaba y siempre quería bailar conmigo.
When the family moved to the United States in 1989, outgoing Gonzalo settled in quickly.
He was very charming. He was really good looking. He was popular with the girls. So he was always asked to be in quinceañeras, which is a traditional, party for us Mexicans when you turn 15.
In 1998, Gonzalo met Marisol Mora at a party, and the teenagers quickly fell in love.
De que estaba muy enamorado de Marisol. Marisol era el amor de su vida de Gonzalo. Era todo para él. Todo.
It was that genuine love and happiness. There was a light in him. He was a completely different person, a happy, full person. All he wanted in life was to have a family, work hard, and fall in love.
After a whirlwind romance, Gonzalo proposed to Marisol.
So the wedding was set to be in September. That was just a couple of months after he was murdered. We have a big family, so it was going to be a big deal.
But instead of a wedding, Gonzalo's loved ones are left heartbroken and grieving. While his family plans a funeral, detectives are digging into the work of this homicide case.
This case was puzzling. There really didn't seem to be a strong motive as to why this young man was murdered. Everything was going good in his life.
He was responsible. He wasn't involved in gangs.
He's just very well liked, very upbeat, and just a trustworthy young man.
It was really difficult. There were still so many unanswered questions, and we had no definitive leads as to who would have caused this or who we were looking for.
The fact that there was still a killer out there, to me, it was very ominous.
This is very grim. We needed to really look into who was responsible for this.
Coming up, investigators uncover a menacing grudge.
He held an extreme dislike for Gonzalo.
He was determined to have Gonzalo killed.
The knife wounds directed at the heart did speak of extreme animosity.
And leads them to discover a web of alarming secrets and lies.
She wasn't in love with Gonzalo, and he wasn't in love with her.
She admitted it was all a lie.
He saw skinheads in the vehicle.
And that's when we really started to think something was wrong.
Before the truth blindsides everyone.
I was like in shock. It was so senseless. It was so senseless.
In the town of Cornelius, Oregon, police are investigating the vicious murder of 20-year-old Gonzalo Pizano Guzman. Wanting more details about his last known movements, detectives speak to his fiancée, Sol.
She described in detail how Gonzalo had come to her house on the night of the 6th, that they sat out front on the porch.
They were discussing their plans for the upcoming wedding and going over a guest list. She stated that following the conversation that he left around 9 o'clock. She stated while they were sitting on the porch that her cousin Jaime and a friend Eddie were playing in the garage of the house, apparently shooting baskets.
That led us to believe that these two young fellows may have been the last known persons to see Gonzalo alive. So it was important that we interview them.
Investigators bring Jaime and Eddie into the sheriff's office.
During the interview, both stated that they had to get to work that night and approached Gonzalo as he was getting in his car and asked if they could get a ride.
They were running late for work. They worked on a janitorial crew run by Saul's brother, Raphael.
They had to be at work in Hillsboro at the Hawthorne Farms Fitness Center at 10 o'clock.
They said Raphael picked them up and took them to work at the athletic club, and that eventually they got off at about 4:30 in the morning.
The fact that they both gave the same statement actually provided themselves an alibi. They did not offer any conflict that they had with Gonzalo. They indicated that they had no reason to hurt him.
To corroborate Jaime and Eddie's alibi, police speak to their boss, Saul's brother, Raphael.
We interviewed him at his house. He was very cooperative, very smooth, very polite, had his own business, a young entrepreneur.
Raphael was an incredibly self-possessed 19-year-old. He had created a janitorial service.
Although he was very young, had a very good contract, had his own cleaning company, and appeared to be very successful.
Detectives ask him to confirm Jaime and Eddie's story.
He confirmed that he had picked them up at Eddie's house and drove them to work. He confirmed their story that they had worked cleaning the health club that night. He said that he was at the athletic club until about 4 in the morning. So Raphael, in effect, corroborates Eddie and Jaime's version of events on the night of the 6th. So we kind of set them aside.
With Jaime and Eddie alibied, investigators turned to the autopsy report, hoping to find new leads.
It became very apparent just how violently he had died.
The medical examiner did find 3 blunt force blows to his skull.
The autopsy also showed that he had been shot 5 times. And then he had also been stabbed 5 times, very brutally, in the area of the heart.
The close cluster of the knife wounds directed at the heart did speak of extreme animosity, some violent emotion.
The gunshot wounds made it appear that his hands were up in a defensive gesture.
Gonzalo was likely pleading for some measure of mercy, and ultimately none was to be had.
The autopsy report also determines that Gonzalo's death occurred around 10 p.m. With the findings in hand, investigators now turn to Gonzalo's workplace, searching for possible suspects.
We interviewed his supervisor. Gonzalo's boss described him as reliable, steady worker, punctual.
As detectives dig deeper, they learn about a startling new side to Gonzalo.
It appeared that he had a relationship with one of the security guards that worked there.
Gonzalo's boss did tell us there may have been some possible involvement between the security guard, Bobette, and Gonzalo. So we needed to look into it. We needed to interview her.
Police bring Bobette, Gonzalo's alleged girlfriend, in for questioning.
She was very upset about his death.
She was very emotional, very distraught about finding out that Gonzalo had been murdered, and ultimately disclosed that, in fact, she had had a very intimate relationship with Gonzalo for a couple months, but she made it very clear she wasn't in love with Gonzalo, and he wasn't in love with her.
Bobette described her relationship with Gonzalo as kind of a fling. It was kept secret. She understood that he was engaged to be married, but it crossed our minds that maybe Bobette's feelings were stronger than she let on.
Maybe she did not want this wedding to go forward.
The wedding was planned for September, only a few months away. Police asked Gonzalo's coworker about her movements on the day of the murder.
Bobette had been at several different locations that day, running errands, and she had receipts to support that. So she was ruled out as a suspect.
But while Bobette's cleared of suspicion, she hands detectives a crucial tip.
Bobette mentioned an ex-boyfriend named Oscar Rodriguez.
She told us Oscar was quite jealous.
He was extraordinarily jealous, apparently had been violently jealous in the past.
About 4 days before the murder, Oscar had found out about her relationship with Gonzalo. He became infuriated and began accusing her of cheating on him.
That could be a motive for Gonzalo's murder, so Oscar became a lead suspect.
Only 2 days into the investigation of the vicious murder of Gonzalo Pizano Guzman, police discover he was involved with his coworker, Bobette. Now she's pointed the finger at her jealous ex, Oscar Rodriguez.
She speculated that maybe he had something to do with it. We looked into him. He had a criminal history.
He'd been pretty extensively involved in gangs at that point in his life, and he was well known to the local police.
Very much an impulsive young man that was also involved in drug activity and drug use. Bobette told us that this was a relationship she had to escape from. She personally felt threatened by his presence and his behavior.
And she was very worried that perhaps he was the one that took some action towards Gonzalo.
Investigators uncover a troubling detail about Oscar's life.
It was discovered that Oscar Rodriguez's mother lived right next door to the victim's family.
The investigation kind of perked up as far as focusing in on Oscar, given the fact that he had such access to Gonzalo.
Detective suspicion grows further when they speak to Oscar himself.
When Oscar Rodriguez was interviewed, he lied to us and told us he had not had any contact at all with Bobette and didn't really know anything about what was going on. When we started to confront him that this was in contradiction to the information that we had from Bobette, he became furious, started yelling at us. "You don't trust me." He stated he had no claims to continue any relationship with Bobette, and he wanted to wash his hands of this entire investigation. Because of his nature, he just drew suspicion upon himself.
He was asked if he'd take a polygraph to show that he didn't have anything to do with Gonzalo's murder. He became very volatile and immediately demanded to end the interview.
And actually stormed out of the interview.
With Oscar not cooperating, detectives investigate his whereabouts during the time of the murder.
During this time frame, Oscar Rodriguez was actually serving a sentence in the Restitution Center.
The Restitution Center is a work-release facility for low to mid-level offenders, where Oscar could get passes to go out and find work.
So the question was, did Oscar have a pass at the date and time of the murder? Was it possible that he wasn't in the Restitution Center?
He is on a strict timeline. He had to check in, check out. It's a secure facility. The building is locked. There are alarms on all the doors and windows.
At the restitution center, there is a lockdown period at night until early in the morning.
After the records were examined, it was positively concluded that he was in the restitution center at the time Gonzalo was killed.
It was impossible for him to have been involved in the actual homicide.
And ultimately, he was ruled out as a suspect.
It's been a week since the murder, and the investigation is no closer to finding a suspect. Meanwhile, the family prepares to bury their beloved Gonzalo.
It was really hard on everybody. My mom decided she wanted to take him to Mexico. He was buried over there, and we all stayed for a while trying to grieve together as a family and process what had just happened to our family. My mom was just devastated.
It hurt me so much to lose Gonzalo. I was grieving deeply. I was in denial. I was in my own world. And I don't even know how I got by.
While the family grieves in Mexico, the community of Cornelius is feeling on edge.
There wasn't a quick arrest within a couple days or a week. This caused concern in the community because no one knew who did it.
Searching for new leads, detectives turn to the public.
We decided to put out a reward for information, and the idea was to get people to come forward if they knew anything and let them know that we're a little bit frustrated with where this investigation is going. We need public help.
Nearly 2 weeks after Gonzalo's murder, police get a tip that sends the investigation in a whole new direction.
We got a call from an employee of the SB gas station.
His name was Ryan Petty. He claimed that he had seen some graffiti written in the bathroom of the gas station. And the graffiti said, "Gonzalo Guzman, 12th Street Gang, please help, call the police."
And once he heard about the reward, he put Gonzalo with that name Gonzalo and recognized it must be the same victim who had left that cry for help on the wall.
Detectives rush to the gas station to interview Ryan. While interviewing him, he divulges a shocking revelation.
So what called his attention to the bathroom was shortly before he saw a car pull up, a white Monte Carlo, that had, in his words, skinheads in the vehicle.
One of them allegedly had a swastika tattooed on his body.
They were accompanying a very scared-looking Hispanic young man.
He stated that it looked like that Gonzalo may have been kidnapped. That was significant in the fact that we felt this was a big break that came in the case.
Nearly 2 weeks after Gonzalo Pizano Guzman was found brutally murdered, a gas station attendant named Ryan Petty has told police he saw Gonzalo with 3 suspicious men the night he was killed.
He described a carload of skinheads that had drove up and a young man in the back seat who appeared frightened, and they escorted him into the men's restroom for a short period of time.
He said that ultimately out of the bathroom, the Hispanic individual came out and they hustled him back into the car and drove away. Ryan Petty reported that when he went into the bathroom after an individual left it, he saw written on the wall, Gonzalo Guzman help 12th Street Gang call police.
But as detectives dig into Ryan's story, some details don't add up.
Had it been Gonzalo who had gone into that bathroom afraid for his life and put his name on the wall, he never would have written his name as Gonzalo Guzman.
We knew that was incorrect. He would not sign his name in that nature. That was the maternal name. He would have used the paternal name.
Guzman is his mother's name. He would have written his name as Gonzalo Pizano. Pizano is his father's name.
And so right away this was suspicious.
And just the whole nature of what he was describing was more like something off of a TV show. The skinheads, the swastika. It just didn't ring true.
And so it was suspected that he was trying to come forward for the reward. We looked through the videotape from the SB station during the period of time this employee stated that car had gone by. There was nothing in that videotape that corroborated anything he had told us.
No white Monte Carlo, no individuals who could be characterized as skinheads. More importantly, no individual who was a scared Hispanic person being escorted to the bathroom.
The examination of the surveillance video at the gas station contradicted Ryan Petty's version of events. And also, one of the issues was he didn't report this right away.
When police check Ryan's record, they find more troubling news.
He had a pretty checkered past.
He was no stranger to the criminal justice system.
Some of his arrests were for crimes that would cause you to doubt his honesty. In my mind, we ruled it out as pure fabrication. It just was too cute, too stereotypical. The mistake with the Spanish surname, I didn't buy it.
With another lead exhausted, investigators face a daunting realization.
We reached a point where we were getting nowhere. Leads weren't panning out.
Having no significant suspect is very depressing.
Really, if you don't solve these cases early on, the longer they go, the likelihood that you're actually going to be able to solve them becomes less and less.
In cases like this where we're not getting anywhere, especially on a homicide, we took this very personal. Up to that point, this team had not had an unresolved homicide.
The lack of progress also adds to the pain suffered by Gonzalo's family.
It was very hard. It was very painful to come back from Mexico and there was no arrest yet.
Fue algo fuerte para mí. Mucho dolor. Tenía mucho coraje y mucho odio en mi corazón.
Everything was very silent, and we were getting very, very impatient. My mom was getting very impatient with the detectives, and all they told us is to please trust them. So we put our life in their hands.
2 more months pass without an arrest. With the case at a standstill, detectives review the entire investigation for something they may have missed.
It can be very frustrating when you reach that point where you've kind of hit the wall, but you just have to resolve to redouble your efforts and to keep digging, keep pushing.
It was time to go back and look over everybody one more time. We knew that Eddie and Jaime were the last people to see Gonzalo at Saul's house the night of the murder.
Even though they'd been interviewed and gave a pretty good account of their activity that night, their boss, Rafael, provided an alibi for them. We wanted to be sure. So at this stage is when we asked them to take a polygraph. But when we began to ask them to take a polygraph, they started dodging and weaving.
For some reason, they began to balk, and this threw a red flag as to why they weren't coming forward. Again, these are the last 2 people to see Gonzalo alive, and now they're getting cold feet about taking a polygraph exam.
And that's when we really started to think something was wrong.
Detectives keep the pressure on Jaime and Eddie, and on September 14th, Eddie comes in for his polygraph.
The polygrapher was hooking Eddie up, attaching these leads to him to measure his response. And he doesn't even get to the questions. And Eddie says, "Okay, I'll tell you what happened."
And he immediately makes it clear that he wants to tell everything that happened.
In police parlance, he spilled it.
2 months after the murder of Gonzalo Pizano Guzman, detectives are re-interviewing witnesses, hoping for a break. Now, Eddie, one of the last people to see Gonzalo alive, has told police he knows more than he's let on.
He gave a detailed, recorded statement about what happened on the night of the murder.
As he talks to investigators, Eddie drops a bombshell.
He disclosed that he had actually been approached by his boss, Rafael, who was Saul's brother, to coordinate delivering Gonzalo to the Forest Hills Country Club parking lot.
Eddie told us that it had all been planned out by Raphael. Raphael had enlisted Joe Noble to help with this crime. Joe was Raphael's friend. Eddie went on to tell us that night he and Jaime lured Gonzalo to drive his car to the golf course. And as they pulled up, Joe Noble appeared with a gun in his hand. And as Eddie and Jaime got out of Gonzalo's car, Noble got into the car, pointing the gun at Gonzalo. And also present in the parking lot was Raphael and his white Ford F-150.
Gonzalo was driven away by Raphael and Joe, but Eddie claims he has no idea what happened next.
He stated that he and Jaime had left the country club and got into their vehicle, left and went home and went to work as usual.
Could the brother of Gonzalo's fiancée, Saul, really be behind his brutal murder?
It was extremely surprising to suddenly see Rafael Mora as somebody different than this really incredibly self-possessed 19-year-old who started his own business.
But according to Eddie, Raphael leads a disturbing double life.
Eddie told us that Raphael was a pretty active drug dealer.
The nice entrepreneur cover of Raphael was all a lie. He's a significant drug dealer, and it appears orchestrated the kidnapping of Gonzalo with Joe Noble.
This completely surprised me. Raphael did appear, at least on the surface, to be legit, and now he's just not who we thought he was.
It was a shock to all of us.
The one thing detectives still need to know is why Raphael would want to kill his future brother-in-law.
Up to that point in time, there was nothing to link him. There was no motive that anybody could speak of.
Investigators first turned their attention to Joe Noble, suspecting he may have been taking orders from Raphael.
Joe Noble was known as a small-time criminal. An informant told us he was very concerned about a .40 caliber pistol he had sold to Joe Noble. And he suspected that this may have been the murder weapon used in the killing of Gonzalo.
That's not the last of the informant's revelations.
He said that Joe Noble had talked to a female at one of the local bars and had asked her to alibi for him on the particular night in question.
We contacted her. She told us that yes, Joe had asked her to say he was with her on the night of the 6th, and most importantly, she said, I wasn't with him.
Police bring Joe in for questioning.
Joe denied having any involvement whatsoever to the murder.
During our interview with Joe, he actually tried to use the alibi, and then when we confronted him with the fact that we'd already talked to her and she said it was all BS, then he stopped talking.
Joel stated that he wanted an attorney and didn't want to talk anymore.
With nothing concrete to hold Joe, police are forced to release him and turn their attention to Raphael.
Investigators learned that Raphael's cleaning business was not all that it was purported to be. He had a contract with the Hawthorne Farms Athletic Club.
The manager of the health club was not very impressed with the quality of Raphael's work and the work of his crew.
It was really a shoddy operation, by all accounts.
We considered the fact that the cleaning company may have been a front for Raphael's drug dealing.
Raphael told police he was cleaning the gym with Eddie and Jaime the night of Gonzalo's murder, so investigators checked with management in order to corroborate his alibi.
The manager of the club said he often couldn't reach him, so we had no idea if he was there or not on the night of the murder.
With his alibi falling apart, detectives asked Raphael's sister, Saul, why he might want Gonzalo dead.
Saul admitted that Raphael had had a serious talk with her and that it was clear that he was opposed to the wedding, felt she was too young.
Raphael did not want Gonzalo marrying Sol.
Just did not see Gonzalo as being worthy of marrying into the family. Investigators learned that Raphael would mock Gonzalo for the car he drove. He'd mock him for bringing over a bottle of wine to his parents that was cheap and not any good.
Raphael held an extreme dislike for Gonzalo. When accompanied by friends, he would go by Gonzalo's car and talk about keying it or smashing a window out and laughing about it.
With the evidence against Raphael stacking up, police are ready to bring him in for an interview. But there's just one setback.
He disappeared. At this point, it's become pretty apparent that Raphael's got something to hide. When you put it all together, there was probable cause to arrest him.
With a warrant for Raphael's arrest, police initiate a manhunt.
He had a girlfriend named Sandy Montez. We found him hiding at his girlfriend's house. He had dyed his hair orange, and it was obvious that he had done it to try to change his identity.
On September 28, 2000, Raphael is officially charged with first-degree kidnapping and aggravated murder.
I was like in shock. I had so much anger at Raphael. It's an anger I can't explain.
Just when police believe they have their man, the investigation takes another shocking turn.
We had Raphael in custody when his girlfriend showed up with evidence stating that there is no way he could have been at the murder scene. This raised some obvious concerns.
Could it be possible that Raphael was not involved in Gonzalo's murder?
It came as an absolute surprise.
Police have arrested Rafael Mora in the death of his sister's fiancé, Gonzalo Pizano Guzman. But now, Rafael's girlfriend, Cindy, claims she has an alibi for him on the night of the murder.
Cindy produced a receipt from a auto detailing place that purported to have dropped off Raphael's vehicle the night of the murder, and that Raphael was there and signed for it. It was presented as a solid piece of evidence that Raphael was working at the athletic club the night in question, and they had the receipt to prove it. And an individual named Cassandra, who owned the company, had signed off and was going to be an alibi witness.
Checking the validity of the receipt, police interview Cassandra, who admits to being a friend of Raphael.
With a little bit of prodding by the investigators, she finally admitted that, in fact, the receipt was fake.
She confessed it was all a lie, orchestrated by Raphael.
It was something that she dummied up because Raphael had asked her to.
With Raphael's alibi discredited, investigators turn up the heat on co-conspirator Joe Noble.
He told the officers that he hadn't been completely honest.
He admitted that he was at the parking lot at the golf course. He was there when the car was burned. He admits to kidnap. He admits to pistol whipping the victim.
He said that it was Raphael ordering him to do that. They then picked up Gonzalo, put him in the back of a Ford white pickup truck.
And then Raphael drove Joe. home with the victim knocked out in the back of the truck.
But when he last saw Gonzalo, albeit knocked out, was still alive.
And then supposedly Raphael would have then driven back out to Hag Lake and killed Gonzalo.
Detectives have a hard time believing Joe was not there when Gonzalo was finally killed, but have no proof.
We had no physical evidence that we could link them to the crime, and it was frustrating.
Desperate, investigators obtained security footage from businesses along the route they believe Raphael and Joe would have taken to and from the murder. Something on one of the tapes grabs their attention.
We saw Raphael's pickup pull into the gas station to get gas.
And lo and behold, there's Joseph Noble getting out of the white Ford and going into the gas station.
And the timing of the gas station surveillance footage indicated that would have been probably shortly after the murder.
Police also obtain a warrant for Raphael's phone records.
Raphael insisted all along that he couldn't have committed the murder because he was miles away cleaning the gym. And lo and behold, at the time of the murder, his phone was not bouncing off the nearest tower to the athletic club. It was bouncing off the nearest tower to Hag Lake, which puts him in the area of the murder. That was huge.
I felt ecstatic because I knew in that moment that we had him, and it absolutely conclusively meant that his alibi at the athletic club was false.
This was a big moment of actually having some physical evidence.
There's a great deal of satisfaction, too, having found the truth.
With the new evidence in hand, prosecutors are confident they can secure a conviction. And in 2003, Joe Noble and Raphael Mora are tried together.
Both were charged with aggravated murder and with kidnapping in the first degree.
At trial, prosecutors present a picture of what they believe happened to Gonzalo the night he was murdered.
Raphael did not want him marrying his sister.
Raphael was determined to have Gonzalo killed.
And so he hatched a plan to get Gonzalo out to the golf course.
Lured Gonzalo out there with Eddie and Jaime.
After getting out of the car, Gonzalo was beat and pistol whipped and thrown into the back seat of the pickup. Raphael or Joe then set the car on fire and they proceeded to Hag Lake.
They drove to an isolated spot. Gonzalo got out of the car. The gun was pointed at him.
We believe that he was shot multiple times by Joe, and that Raphael was the one that wanted to get the final word in and stabbed him multiple times in the heart.
On the stand, a witness reveals Raphael bragged to him about the murder.
That Gonzalo was begging for his life, that Gonzalo was promising that he would stop the relationship with Saul, that he would move to Mexico.
Mató a mi hijo de esa manera tan cruel. Gonzalo no se merecía esa muerte tan fuerte, nada más para que no se casara con Marisol.
No one deserves to be killed that way. No one. It was so senseless. It was so senseless.
On April 28, 2003, the jury finds Raphael and Joe guilty of Gonzalo's murder.
Joe was sentenced to life with a possibility of parole after 25 years. Raphael was sentenced to straight life, no possibility of parole.
After 5 years in prison, Raphael appeals his conviction, arguing ineffective counsel.
The judge decided that this case should go back to trial, which was a shock to all of us.
Ultimately, a decision was made to allow Raphael to plead to manslaughter in the first degree.
Raphael's sentence is reduced to 25 years and 10 months. With time served, he will be eligible for early release in 2024.
He had no remorse. He had no guilt. He's a monster. What he did to us changed our life forever. He destroyed us.
Even after everything they've endured, Gonzalo's family remains inspired by his memory.
Yo lloré por muchos años, mucho tiempo, y un día yo lo soñé. Yo estoy bien, ma. No llores por mí. Yo estoy muy bien. Y yo lo miré riéndose y me dijo que ya no llorara por él, que él estaba bien, que él estaba en paz.
He was a happy person that wanted everybody around him to have that same joy and made sure that we were always laughing. Those are the moments that I will always cherish the most. Gonzalo was one of the most genuine men that I've known, that I continue to admire.
Brand nigga from the 9-1. Switch that over, that's the young blonde. I was at the West Coast, now I'm in the East Coast. Saw you when